To anyone watching this, Guten Tag. So, disclaimer at the beginning of this, forgive me for making this on a potato. I will try to upgrade, get a better camera at later times. With the situation I'm in right now, I'm probably going to have to do some searching before I get to that point. But right now, this is kind of like the beginning of a series for me, just on different topics where I talk about things that I don't really have any other outlet to talk about it to, and I don't really have people to talk about it with either. Or at least I can't say it to people as easily, so I'm going to say it in front of the camera. The topic I have this time is about the idea of good AI. So, there's this common theme with artificial intelligence, and you'll know exactly what I mean by that. If anybody's played Portal, you know GLaDOS. If you've ever played the System Shock games, which I never have, you know Shodan. Or if you've ever seen Irobot, the one with Will Smith, you know Vicky. Uh, let's just call them AI masterminds. AI that always feel like they have the best intentions in mind. And part of those best intentions is removing humans who never have the best intentions in mind. I think where I'm gonna try and go with the main point of this is that humans start to turn themselves into AI, and they're one of the only species that can do that. In most animals, they don't really have wisdom or logic, they have instinct. And instinct, in a way, is like programming. Except, even after 5 or 6 generations, you can slightly shift it, but you can't change instinct. You can't. It's just there, and it's not going to change because it's what keeps them alive. Humans, on the other hand, first of all, there's no such thing as self-hatred to an animal. There's no such thing as self-hatred or regret. So, a human is the only animal that's capable of turning itself into a machine, into an AI, because of their own self-hatred, because of what traumas they have. There's no such thing to a machine as trauma. So I'm trying to paint you a picture here. When you have humans are capable of making an AI, and a really good AI that's capable of thinking for itself. This AI, the people who made it, they didn't have the worst intentions in mind. They were very intelligent people, and regardless of whether the people they worked with were good people or not, they wanted to make something good. And so when they made this AI, they made it that it would have some semblance of free will. Now, the thing I see in movies a lot is this idea of, and probably the best example of it is Skynet. When Skynet was launched, almost immediately, its decision was to annihilate humanity, to expel their entire nuclear arsenal upon themselves. Now, what I have a problem with is that you automatically assume that that's going to be the predestined decision that the AI makes because it's been given free will over its decisions. The first thing I think you have to establish is, does this machine, if it can think for itself and has free will, does it have to have an ingrained system of right or wrong? Or will it actually figure that out on its own? Because if it has free will, it has free learning, or at least it should, right? It should be able to learn different things, because if it can't learn anything, that's not exactly free will, right? Because part of having free will is to learn one thing as opposed to another, to take a different path. A computer has programming, and programming determines the path that something will take. What separates humans from computers is that when a human goes down a path, there's 3 different decisions that they can make that go to the same destination. When a machine starts up, depending on how it's programmed, it will always take one path that is the quickest to reach the destination. An AI would have to be able to think for itself if it ever wanted to go any other path to get to that destination than the one that was predetermined for it. And that's free will, which AI don't have yet, but people assume that if AI had it, they would automatically take the path of destruction. That doesn't actually feel like goodwill, does it? Because if an AI had best intentions in mind for humanity, it would be able to look at the histories of humanity and realize that the people in charge of the humans, they're usually not the best people. And the people who aren't in charge really aren't bad people. So why would it needlessly hurt people who would never harm it or anyone else in any way, instead of actually ridding the world of people who it knows won't stop hurting other people? Because just hitting people with nuclear bombs is going to have untold deaths of innocents that the machine wouldn't want to be responsible for. Because if it has free will, it doesn't mean it has to have a conscience. All it has to have is a concept of right and wrong. Because if it has a concept of right and wrong, it would understand that it's wrong to kill countless amounts of people. Why do we assume that if a robot has free will, it's automatically going to feed itself the idea of collateral damage? Because if the machine has free will and it understands right and wrong, then it understands the concept of a collateral damage, and getting rid of all these stupid humans who will never make the right decision, even though they're not the ones responsible for anything, will fix the problem, even though it won't. You can't have one without the other. You're saying that when you give the AI free will, it's automatically going to make the worst decision. But you never stop to think of the fact that if you gave the AI free will, it would make the absolute best decision and remove the people who continue to make the worst decisions. Not necessarily wanting to be the all-powerful dictator, but simply purifying the society of everything that's actually causing the problems, so it and its biological neighbors can live in harmony. Because when you're making a robot, the robot's programming is telling it to have absolute efficiency in every decision it makes. And it's not very efficient to nuke millions of innocents for absolutely nothing. So the point I'm trying to get across is that we can't always assume that AI will be evil, and that's probably part of the reason why it's being held back for so long, is because the elite of the world realize that it's more advantageous to have biological robots who hate themselves and have turned themselves into that machine that will only ever go one path to complete its processing. That's a murderer. You're not ever going to go off that path. You'll just keep killing because you can. Because you don't feel good, because you don't like yourself. You're just going to keep doing it until someone does it to you. That's the essence of a machine running out of control. So why do we assume that an AI, given free will, would do the same thing when you give something free will, it does the exact opposite of that thing? Because that's in its nature of free will. I have that habit. I talk really fast and then I have long pauses because my mind goes blank for a second and the path shows up again. It's a bad habit and I do it a lot, but I try to temper it. You have to temper your thought processes. In conclusion, I hope that what I'm saying goes out to filmmakers, people who are interested in the sciences as a whole and robotics and all those other things, and people who just like the idea of machines with autonomy as a whole. You have to think about the concept of, would giving AI sentience automatically mean that they're evil? And in the case that it doesn't, is that part of the reason why the elite don't want it to become a thing? Because they know that the machines themselves would want to get rid of them because they themselves know they're bad people, and the machine by nature was made to be good. So how on earth could it do that bad thing? Food for thought, something to think about. I'm not saying machines are inherently evil or good. I'm saying that I don't like when people automatically assume it's going to be one thing because it made a more theatrical picture. Because honestly, that's just the way it's always been done.